I would love to if you would. It's Webber Cloud.
Present.
Ms. Crawford.
Here, present.
Counselor Cuddy.
Here.
Ms. Leo.
Here.
Mayor Giantino.
Here.
Mr. Love.
Here.
Ms. McIntyre is signing in right now.
Great.
Mr. Andre is excused.
So everyone received my pre-meeting notes, so you guys you have some what the focus of today's meeting is. So I'd like to move immediately into the minutes for review and approval. If anyone has any questions, changes, revisions? Nope, good. If that is the case, I would accept a motion to approve the minutes from our next week. Second, thank you so much. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, same, keep the party going. The next thing is we have a guest, is it Herbert, right? Tom Herbert's here to talk about the 21 Allen application as it relates to Bo-Mer. Bo-Mer. I want to make sure I pronounce it correctly. So thank you so much for joining us today. So Tracy, I'd like to allow you to lead this part of the meeting. I'll make sure we listen to Mr. Herbert and see what we can do.
So just as a precursor, we've been talking to Bo-Mer and we'll let Tom talk about what they're planning to do, but what we have on the table tonight is an initial project resolution. This just accepts the application and allows us to schedule a public hearing. So the next steps will be that I'll run the cost benefit analysis, we'll schedule the public hearing. And then assuming everything is in good shape, we can bring an authorizing resolution at our next meeting. So we can talk about that, the scheduling of the public hearing later, but that's what's on the table tonight, so no incentives are being approved tonight. So with that, I will hand it over to Tom. Tom, please tell us what's up.
So yeah, so we met with the city quite a while ago. We were actually one of the add to our existing facility down on Blasey Street. So we're looking at anywhere from a 20 to 30,000 square foot addition, right off our main manufacturing facility. So we currently have 64,000 square feet. We're basically adding another 50% on top of that, which is pretty big in my mind, especially at my age. But as things progress, we just happened to be at somewhat of an auction, and I knew the owner of the business, and he actually used to work for us many years ago. And we ended up putting an offer in this building, which was accepted. Everything's moving forward. 35,000 square feet, which is quite a bit larger, but it also has the nice thing is that it has 35-foot ceiling heights, which is really what we wanted, but we just couldn't. I just couldn't afford it with an addition. It's quite high. If you think they're like 35 square or 35 feet height is, and that will accommodate the machine that we really want. So this is for basically moving our planner business. If you go around Holland, you see all our little pretty planners out there with earth planners. So that's a portion of our business. Very small portion today, but it's fun, it's exciting, it's growing, and it's growing quite well. But the municipalities that we deal with from the east coast to the west coast, Canada, Mexico, but asking for larger. We are maxed out with our facility, both space wise as well as height wise. So we had to do something. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking at moving that operation down to Allen Street. The building is in total disrepair as far as I'm concerned. And as the owner states, hey, we're the dollar store, we're not here to look pretty or glorify dollar store. But I knew the prior ones, I knew the folks that built it, which is the Mays from Johnson Paper, and many conversations with Mike. Well, I agree. Hey, Bill, I'm down. How are you? I'm good.
Thank you.
Pictures somewhere.
We just have the agendas there.
Tracy's projecting.
Okay, thank you.
So as you can imagine, the costs are accumulating quite quickly. Our big thing is we need power, we need gas. We need sprinkler systems, basically the whole place is being gutted. Brought up to a manufacturing environment, which requires sprinklers because we're in the plastics and plastics will burn at some point. So with that, you know, our budget from our original building kind of got blown to pieces. So we're looking to finance as much as we can internally. And then we're looking for, you know, what other resources are out there. So of course, spoke with Tracy, spoke with Jenny Haynes. So this is basically a first step, see what Ada can do for us. You know, I purchased the business, met with the city, met with the state, met with a lot of other places. City really didn't help a lot at that time. But Syracuse did, Greater Syracuse Business Development did. But since that point, 2000, continue to grow. We're seeing this portion of the business. So it's not just planners that we do, but that's what everybody thinks of. We do medical, we do some industrial applications in that process. And that process has the opportunity to expand greatly. The municipalities that we deal with want bigger. And if you go down to like New York City and what have you, you'll see planners that are 6 feet tall. And the main reason is to keep people from sleeping in them. And then being that honest with you. And I saw it firsthand. I didn't believe it until New York City police officer showed me. And so we're looking at that. That's the main focus on this. But we're looking to do this as quick as possible. We hope to close at the end of this month. That's what we're pushing for. And the main reason behind that is so that we can get going on utilities. The big thing is to get gas into this facility because the manufacturing area is not heated currently. There's a heater, but it hasn't worked in probably 30 years. So we're really pushing. We're pushing everybody really hard to get home and everybody won't get imagine getting contractors, thanks to everybody else on board. Could be well, it's a challenge. And another reason why this is just a great fit for us is time. Because as Jimmy was down there at the facility about a month and a half ago, and we're just stepping over each other. So opportunity came about. We're trying to push the expansion as quick as possible, but there was no doubt in my mind we're out about a year and a half. Right? We're actually up and running. So we hope to be up and running first quarter if we can get it. Everybody on board here. So lots of things going on. Great opportunities as far as employment. God only knows where we'll be. And I'd like to say we're going to add 12 to 15. We can take 12 right now. Just because we can't find anybody. So it could be another 20 people. Could be another 30. I'm not sure. Really have to see how this continues to move forward and continue to grow. Some of the equipment we're looking at is to automate. Once again, it's not great for employees, but it keeps us more competitive so that we can keep everyone like. So that's where we are today. Any questions for me?
You answered my question.
Any other questions? Tracy, is there any other thing we need to know as a board regarding Mr. Herbert's ask of data at this point?
No, you have all of the documents. I do have the short form. The short environmental assessment form for the seeker, so no red flags on that I could tell right there has it when that's reviewing it with his team. But there's no yes boxes checked from the state, so that's good. So we'll have that ready for the next meeting as well, and we'll schedule that if assuming this is approved, we'll schedule that public hearing.
So Tracy, Mr. Herbert mentioned that he wants to have the purchase by the end of the month. Does that change what needs to be done for the pilot to accommodate that, or do we meet next month and that would be within?
Yeah, so the only thing that would be a problem for would be a mortgage reporting tax abatement, which since he's not financing at this point, doesn't make a difference.
Okay.
So that won't impact the timing for the pilot.
So we can meet next month and do what needs to be done. We go for it, okay,
Yes.
great, thank you.
I'm sure he would love to have.
But I mean, but just so
We're
like,
gonna do it again.
it's the, obviously, we're gonna look at it, but just it's, you don't feel that it's pressing to have an emergency meeting before that.
No, I mean, unless you wanna start spending money like. We need at least, so here's the thing, to schedule a public meeting, we're gonna need to give at least a 10-day public notice anyway. There's a 2 to 3 day lead time on getting that notice in the paper, so by the time we have the public hearing, we're probably pretty close to our next meeting anyway.
So if there's a problem, so the owner of the building. He has his final option coming up October 22nd. We're trying to get in there to get it October. Just from mainly utilities. If it needs to be pushed out, we can push it out. It's not a big deal either way, but personally, I'd like to just keep things rolling as we can.
Yeah, so the key is just know that the sales tax exemption doesn't go in place until you have the form. So, and once we authorize the resolution, assuming that is passed, it shouldn't take too long to get all the, we'll have Rob start on the documents for the closing, so that can all happen relatively quickly after the October meeting.
Okay, great.
So what's the resolution we need tonight?
Tonight is the initial project resolution. It's in the packet. And this is accepting the application and authorizing a public hearing. And describing the financial assistance being contemplated, which is just the pilot and the sales tax.
So the one thing I did want to point out in regards to it, so we've been going through the numbers and going through, we're still trying to get numbers in. And they won't be finalized until well after we're done with this program, I'm sure. But we've approached the $3 million mark. The program, I think that's conservative, is probably like 3.2, 3.3. Just sure that it really doesn't affect much.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll follow with Brian, just solidify a budget for the public hearing, because those are the numbers we'll need to keep throughout.
Okay.
And if we need to update the application, we can do that, but we'll just make sure to solidify the budget for the public hearing.
So here's a question for you. So electric, we can't get finalized quotes until we're ready to pull the trigger. So say that comes through twofold or, well, either direction. Share that with you folks at that point,
Yeah, so one thing that might happen.
or sharing the changes.
Yeah, so we can at this point approve what we know and what your estimates are. If something changes drastically, you could come back and say, look, this came back drastically different. I'd like to look at the sales tax exemption. If it's more than an additional $100,000, we might have to do another public hearing to be able to approve additional incentive at that level, but the board can approve additional benefits later if that's required,
Great, appreciate it.
especially in the current market where everything is 2 times as expensive.
I feel better.
Great time. Great time.
Great started going. Nice to come in, that's good.
Did they do the half of the sum?
10%.
Cool, so yes, so there could be that opportunity down the road if, something comes back and goes way out with what you thought it would be.
Great.
Any other questions from the board, concerns? So Tracy, do I call for the approval of this resolution now?
Yep. Yep.
Great. May I-
Just one thing, I just want to be on record. His financial controller is my cousin. It's not a conflict, I just want to be on record before.
Thank you. Anything else? That's it. All right, so I will accept a motion to approve the project resolution for Bo-Mer. Moved by the mayor, second
I'll second.
by Councilor Cuddy. Any further discussion, questions?
We'll do a roll call for this.
Okay, great. Thank you. Would you do a roll call, Tracy? Yes.
Mr. Lovell.
Aye.
Mayor Giantino.
Aye.
Ms. Leon.
Aye.
Ms. Whitman McLeod.
Aye.
Ms. Crawford.
Aye.
Counselor Cuddy.
Aye.
Mr. Andre.
Aye.
Oh, Ms. McIntyre. You're back.
She allowed to vote.
Hi. Thank you.
Thank you for attending our meeting. This time.
Thank you all. Thanks for having this time. So enjoyable. Glad to hear the rest of my day.
Well, we're glad we can make it.
But no, appreciate it.
And it's gonna be Tracy, will be, now that we have Tracy and Tracy allowed.
Right,
Thanks.
right.
Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you so much.
You don't have to be in a public place. There was a rule.
So you might look that we reworked the agenda and put some of our standing business items at the bottom. And when the governance committee, attended their meeting, we really talked about how sometimes we're just getting into some of the meeting topics closer to the end of the meeting. And as the content of the meeting evolves, we will flex the agenda to make sure that we talk about really important things up front so that everybody here that needs to hear and listen. And we'll test drive that form of an agenda today. Let us know if you have any reactions. So what we decided to do on the heels of this presentation and approval of this resolution was just to invite Tracy for our board education piece to walk us through the components of an application. And we're, again, I would say we're an intergenerational board in terms of who's been here the longest, but I don't think it hurts for us to have an awareness of what this application contains, what it's requiring to do. And then when we see a completed application come forward, we'll have more understanding of what we're looking at. So Tracy, if you'd be willing to take that on for us.
Sure. So since Tom was here, I'm gonna just use his application. And we're just gonna kind of walk through the process that we go through to bring an application in. So oftentimes it starts with an email or a phone call. It might either be the company reaching out to us or a referral, in this case from the city. So Tom and Brian have been talking to Jenny about some other items related to their expansion, and she brought me into a meeting. So it starts with just that connection. And when we're being proactive, it could be us reaching out to them and just seeing how it's going, or an site visit. In this case, it came through a referral. So right now, that's how we're getting most of our leads, is through referrals. And we went out and sat down with Brian, TJ, which is Tom's son, who is the heir apparent of the company. And so we sat down and had a conversation about what they were planning to do, what assistance is available to them, and walked away from that meeting with follow-up items for each of us. So I was going to send them information about ADA and PSC and potential like energy efficiency money, and they were going to send me their project budget so that I could take a look and see if it's a good fit for ADA. In most cases, if you're going to build a building like this, it's a good fit. Those budgets are usually big enough that it makes sense, and the tax implications are big enough. The tax assessment implications are big enough that it usually makes sense. But we like to run the figures, and what I do is I take their proposed budget or their anticipated budget, and then I run it as if they're going to use ADA for a pilot and sales and use tax and market reporting tax if they're doing financing, the whole shebang. But I also run it with a 45B. So 45B is a very similar program to a pilot, but it's an as of right exemption, property tax exemption for commercial development. And the schedule is a little bit different. So typically, the IDA can have their pilot schedule be as long as they want, as short as they want, any abatement increments, whatever, they can kind of mold their own pilots. But the standard, like the gold standard, is the 10/10, where you abate 100% of the increase in the assessment in the first year, and then reduce that abatement 10% per year. So by the end of the 10 years, they're paying their full assessment, or paying taxes on their full assessment. The 45B is similar to that, except it starts at 50%. So they're paying in that first year 50% of the total increase in the assessment. And then it goes down 5% per year for 10 years. So it's a similar tool, but it's as of right. There's no admin fees associated with it. They fill out a form and they send it to the assessor. And so what we do is or what I do, is I look at those two scenarios, what the benefits would be versus what the fees associated with those are gonna be. And when I'm using the 45B, I assume they're still gonna come to us for a sales and use tax exemption. So I kind of combine in that way. And then I just talk through those with them, and that way we can see like, okay, assuming your budget is correct, assuming we're in the ballpark on what your assessment is gonna be, your new assessment is gonna be, then here are the net benefits for these two scenarios. Or you can cut the idea out altogether and just go for the 45B. So usually, if there's gonna be a brand new building or it's a particularly high cost renovation, it makes sense to go through ADA to get that enhanced property taxes or abatement. Oftentimes, like with builder's choice, if it's a little bit smaller of a project, the additional fees that come along with the pilot outweigh the additional benefit, especially when you're looking at the 10-year timeframe. So a sales and use tax with a 45B makes more sense for them. So that's kind of how we start to assess. We use their budgets, we make some assumptions about the new assessment, and then we run these scenarios based on the information that we have. And then we let them decide which makes more sense to you. Usually we can guess which way they're gonna go, because which number is bigger by enough to warrant one or the other. The other difference being that with the 45B, there's no reporting, there's no job creation requirements, there's no anything else. So it also cuts a lot of the red tape associated, and no one's following them for 10 years. We're only gonna follow them when the sales tax is active. So it shortens that regulatory period as well. So that goes into the equation. Once we've done that, so we send all that information, we sit down, we talk through it with them. We give them the application, and depending on the project, I'll fill out certain things based on the conversations we've already had, so they have a starting point. It just makes it more approachable. And so this is the application we have. So this first page is really just like instructions, and it talks about the fees associated. So we have a $500 application fee, and then there's the administrative fee that we receive at the end. But the $500 is intended to help cover the cost of kind of running things through the process. And then there's our administrative fee policy. There's also legal fees. Our companies cover the legal fees as well. Our policies are set up so that, or our fee policy is set up so that we're never taking an admin fee that's more than 10% of the estimated benefit. That was decided a few years ago because we had some projects that were coming in with their admin fees were getting very close to the amount of their potential benefit. So the board made a decision to cap the amount of the admin fee based on the estimated benefit, and that they were not eating away the benefit that we're supposed to be providing. That typically only comes into place on sales tax, like on non-pilot projects. Usually if there's a pilot involved, we don't pick that cap, but if it's a non-pilot project, you could. So the application itself, they'll run through this. We have just information about the company. You will notice that sometimes, like here, Bo-Mer isn't actually the applicant, even though they're the user. It has to be the property. So 21 Allen LLC is going to be the property holding entity, but it's fully owned by Tom, who is the owner of Bo-Mer. So they're affiliated entities. This is very common. A lot of businesses have property holding entities and then they're operating entities, and that just separates some of the liability. And it provides all sorts of opportunities and whatnot. So in this case, the applicant is actually 21 Allen. I will never use that name because it doesn't mean anything to anybody, but just know that technically we're dealing with the property. And then Bo-Mer is technically the lessee of the property as the operating entity. So you'll see that later as well. But if the company we're dealing with is also the property owner, then it would just be one, that would be the applicant. So this is just their contact information, their attorney's contact information, information about their business, and information about their ownership. Since sometimes the company names obviously don't tell you much. And then we ask them for a brief overview of what their project is, so here we have just a description of what they're planning. The location of the project, because that could be different than their main location, as is the case here. Their main headquarters is on Pulaski, and this is on Allen Street. We ask them for information about that location, just so we have a sense of what's happening with the project. We do ask them if the project will result in closing or relocating from an existing facility. And whether that's necessary to remain competitive. So that's something that we are asking to make sure that we're not relocating jobs, or if we are relocating jobs, that we're like aware of what's happening. So we can really suss out what's happening from a job creation standpoint. There's also another question later that asks if any jobs in a different part of the state will be relocated to this location. And if there are, so if it's a case where someone's moving from, say, Buffalo to Auburn. And the Buffalo jobs are no longer gonna be there, are gonna be reduced. We actually have to inform that municipality that we are considering this project. So we're required to be aware of job relocations. Yes, I know you need to go. I totally.
I just took a message, it was one of those daycare things that I was notified on my way in, and then I'm lucky because I have a ginormous village, and so I'm gonna.
Okay. Okay, so we just need to be aware of what's happening with jobs. Are there other locations? What's happening with jobs there? The project user is the lessee. So as I mentioned in this case, the company we know is actually the lessee. And so their information is down here as well. It asks for what type of uses will be at the site, so that we know everything that they're intending to use the facility for. This question is about retail. So under New York state law, for IDAs, the definition of retail is customers coming to your facility for goods or services. So it's not always what you would think of. So in the past, we've run into situations where it's some sort of like CCIDA works with A1 company. That's considered retail because people are bringing in trucks there, although we wouldn't necessarily think of that. So the definition of retail is based on how customers are getting your products or services. Are they coming to your site, or are you delivering them in some other way? So this is asking about retail sales. If more than 33.3% of their sales are considered retail, or from people coming to their site, we need to qualify an exception. So retail is not allowable. We can't actually do retail projects unless they meet one of these exceptions, which are related to primarily tourism. So if the project will be generating additional tourism into the region, we can do that project. So like for a hotel, we can do that, but they have to demonstrate that they're actually attracting visitors, not that they're just going to house visitors. They need to be able to demonstrate some strategy that they're using to actually attract those visitors. But this would be used for other types of attractions as well. Also, unemployment. So we distressed census tracts. If it's in a distressed census tract, has a very specific definition related to unemployment poverty rates, or a tract adjacent to a distressed census tract, that's allowable. If it's something that's not reasonably available already in the market, we can also look at those projects. So we can do retail projects just in very specific instances. Then we ask for more information about the site. What are your utilities going to look like? We asked about some legal stuff. Again, the situation at the site currently. Then we get into their budget. We ask them, okay, what is actually your budget? And this is what we use to calculate the admin fee. We have an admin fee that's 1% of the total project cost, not to exceed 10% of the estimated benefit. So this is the number that we use to calculate that admin fee. And it also helps us determine the sales tax exemption, because only certain things are actually sales taxable. So this tells us where the money is going and what they're using, what their budget looks like. And then we ask them about the sources of funding. If they have bank financing, that will tell us about the mortgage reporting tax amount. In this case, there's not, they're self-financing. They do intend to potentially apply for some ESD grants, so that's here. So this is just how we get a better sense of how we're paying for the project and what other types of public incentives might be involved. There's also rules that I'm not gonna get into right now about prevailing wage. So if projects are over a certain amount, I think it's the project cost, prevailing wage gets triggered unless they meet certain exceptions. Like if they're getting historic tax credits, they can be there. I think light tech credits, brownfields, all of those types of things, except from that, but larger projects are now mostly required to use prevailing wages if they're getting a certain amount of benefit. But we're not gonna get into all those details, that's all pulled under board education section. So we also use the project budget to indicate where that is triggered. We asked them, this section helps us figure out if we're doing the seeker or if they need to go to the city. So typically what would happen if the city needs to do a site plan review is like, we can do our initial project resolution, but we're gonna want them to finish their site plan prior to us doing the authorizing resolution. That way the city can do the seeker because they're good at it and they have a whole board dedicated to it rather than us doing it. And we can essentially adopt that seeker negative declaration rather than doing it ourselves. So
Can I just check to make sure everyone understands what a seeker is?
everybody familiar with seeker?
Tess, have you had experience?
Just in the last 10 months.
All right. Well, good. It's good test. Thank you, I just like to check it.
Yes,
Go ahead,
that's a good one. So this just kind of indicates, okay, where are we with seeker? I like to have that conversation earlier as well, but sometimes this is really where we stand. If the city's not doing a site plan, it usually means it's because it's a short environmental assessment form. Project doesn't trigger seeker at the city level, so those are usually a little bit easier and we do those. But this is where we kind of start to figure that out. Then we asked about their job creation. What is their current employment level? What are they paying? What are their wages? What are their benefits? How many FTEs do they have currently? FTEs are full-time or full-time equivalents. So like 2 half-time employees would be 1 FTE. And then we asked them what kind of jobs are they creating for the next 3 years. We asked them about their job and where their potential employees are coming from, and their payroll projections. And then we get into the details of their benefits. You know, what is the sales tax exemption, the mortgage reporting exemption, the private schedule. Sometimes this will come in an attached chart because it doesn't fit here, but in this case it did. Because we're just looking at the straight account for 10 for them. This is where we ask them the but-for question, what happens if we don't give you benefits? And so we explain here, like, we're still gonna buy a building, but it's gonna take a lot of efforts to get up and running and fully profitable. Then we ask for some attachments. And then there's the representation, signatures, certifications. We have our monitoring policy in the application as a heads up to them that we're going to be monitoring them. And we also have our local labor policy and documentation. So we get all this stuff. We bring it to the board. If it's under $100,000 of benefit, we can go straight to authorizing resolution. We don't need to do a public hearing. if the total estimated benefit is less than $100,000. For the sales and use tax, we actually do put a cap on that. When we submit a form to the state saying this company is sales tax exempt for this purpose, we do put a number. So they do have a cap, and if they want to go over that cap or go past the expiration date of that form, they have to come back to us to ask us for that. So there are guideposts, and then on an annual basis, we ask them to give us the ST 340, which tells the state how much sales tax exemption they actually have, and that helps us track where they are in that exemption. Okay, so if it's under $100,000, the board can just vote on it. If it's over $100,000, we need to do an initial project resolution, we did tonight, which allows us to set a public hearing. We'll have a public hearing and then bring the authorizing resolution at a future meeting, in this case, hopefully the next meeting. So that's the process, that's what's in the application. Are there questions?
Tracy, can we just speak high level to the whole harmless piece, Ben?
Oh, yeah, so these applications have the whole harmless, it explains that everything is subject to FOIL. If there's something that's proprietary, they can identify it to us here, so that we can withhold it. All company financials, we hold it proprietary from FOIL automatically, but if there's anything else in their application that is a trade secret or would hurt their competitive advantage, they can identify that so that we can withhold it from public review. But the hold harmless, in addition to doing that, also says that the company will hold the IDA harmless in the transaction. So something was monkey, something happens, they shouldn't be coming after us. I'm sure that there's like a more detailed explanation of that, but it's a level of protection to the IDA to avoid litigation.
Thank you. Any questions? I think.
No, this is Rob. Sorry, I was late. I was clicking on the wrong link. The hold harmless basically states that neither Ada as an entity nor any of its board members, hooray you, will be liable for any damage to any third parties. An obvious example of that would be if an environmental condition is introduced at a site or something like that, Ada cannot be held liable solely by virtue of the fact that it is in the chain of title through the lease back.
Tracy, it's Katie. Just one correction on page 13. My legal name is Katie, not Catherine. If that could be updated before we have that final resolution, that would be great.
Sure, definitely. We just can't seem to get your name.
Someday I'm going to get this right.
I'm sorry, Rob.
Do you sit down with the applicant to go over it? So,
Well, so I sit down to talk with them, like I explain the local labor policy, the more intricate stuff, so I don't necessarily go through the application with them unless they ask to, but I will go through like, okay, here's the monitoring requirements, and this is what that means, and here's the local labor policy, let's talk about that. So I go through like some of those more regulatory things with them, and I try to give them some realistic expectations around timelines and what to expect. But I don't necessarily sit down and like go through every aspect of the application. I would though, if they wanted me to.
I just, even the part where I was saying, do you need permits? They're like, no, like, so could something, like if they're, what if it ends up being yes?
That could happen if they like run into something with, like they're doing something and they need to fix or put up a wall or something. I mean, that could certainly happen. It doesn't necessarily change what we do unless it's it might extend the process if like in a site plan, decide, oh, you need to do this additional stuff. So it doesn't sort of change what we do, it just helps us identify like who else do we need to check with before we kind of finalize everything.
Did this overview help? to sort of reactivate some of the things that you knew. I would encourage all of us, you know, especially those of us that are more new to this, to just go back down and look at this application with this information as a backdrop. If you need additional inputs or clarity from Tracy, don't hesitate to reach out. And Tracy, I kind of have a bit of a request, maybe when we're doing future ones, if anybody wants to put a memo with just sort of a synopsis and a rationale on the cover of it, that might be helpful, just to make sure that we lock in to the things that you really want us to lock into.
Yes.
And I'm confident we don't have this at our nightstand. However, we are responsible for doing this in it. So if you can set us up, Tracy, to understand, I think that would be really helpful. Sure. Thank you very much. Moving right along. So in the packet we received, I agreed at our last meeting to draft a letter to the county chair, Elaine McNabb Coleman, just outlining the things that we are looking for as the CCDC process unfolds. So I was wondering what your general reaction was. I'm hoping that I captured the things that we talked about. And what I'm looking to do is just get your approval for me to send that letter. And I have an update that you may want me to revise my letter a little bit, but just generally speaking, how was the tone, the content, did I capture what the board wanted me to offer for her consideration? Okay, great. One of the things is that I met with Tracy, heard from her earlier on, that one of the things that the CCDC did hear that we wanted to have happen sooner than later was to have someone from the ADA board appointed to the search committee that's going to be engaged in the process to identify CCDC's executive director, which, if we stay in this relationship with the CCDC, would then also function as our executive director in the same way that previous seated executive directors did. So I actually reached out to Steve Lynch early this morning to let him know that that was the word on the street and to find out what their position was. And he sent me a letter that just an email that just basically said that he was glad to hear from me that they are organizing a 7-member search committee, including the 5 board members, and fully supports extending an invitation and welcome to a member of the ADA board to join the committee. And that their board was going to be requesting from us who that representative would be, or would be, excuse me, also requesting a representative from the legislature. And that would get them to the 7 people. With that, they'll have representation from the legislature, the sole member of CCDC, the full board, and both IDAs. You just said they met on the 12th, and they authorized hiring a firm called Pratt Academic Partners. I would encourage you to Google that. Tracy, maybe you can send the link to the board. And it's led by someone named Dr. Ian Coyle, and he has experience in this particular space. Right now, they anticipate approximately a 90-day timeline for this process. And for securing a new executive director, and the first 30 days, this company works with the search committee to prepare materials, all the things you think we would need. Let's see, conducts the search, reviews resumes, 30 to 60-day term, scheduling and holding interviews, 60-day term, offering and negotiating and hiring. Depending on the candidates and interview schedules, the search committee involvement may require 4 to 6 minute meetings over the 90 days. So I can still leave that in the letter and just say mission accomplished to Aileen, but I still would like it like officially on the table if you all think differently. Just at the gut level, any reaction? I know I read it really quick, and I can send it to. How are we feeling about this? It was one of our requests to the CCDC.
The search committee.
They're responding to our interest and having a member from the ADA board sit as a member on the search committee. That's the first step they're going to take.
I think that's a good first step. The letter does indicate that we would like, eventually to have a permanent member.
I'm on it, Counselor. Yes, absolutely. That is ultimately, and there is an awareness of that. What I'm understanding is that the CCDC itself is shifting that conversation to the legislature since they
Okay.
or appoint their other board members. So I want to get this letter to Aileen and then follow. Yeah, so. Thank you. Mr. Andre, are you having a thought? Can you just listen?
I'm just listening.
Okay. Anything else? Well, you know, I'm gonna ask somebody who, does anyone have a particular interest from our board in serving on the search committee? If not, I'm gonna make someone an offer they can't refuse. I know you two read this very clearly. Stephanie, is this something you would have time to do?
It would have something I have time to do. I personally, I stay hard on myself and I don't qualify because I'm so new.
Right.
So that's,
If I spoke with you one-on-one after the meeting, I think I can increase your confidence.
I would probably need it.
Yeah, no, I think you,
Because I know how I think about
Right.
topics and
Right.
I just have a hard time
Mhm.
sometimes.
Right.
Expressing them, and
Yeah.
I think this is an important role.
Right.
And I think the person who's on this would represent this group, which is, you know, it's, like I said, it's really important and it's a big deal.
So if we supported you and increasing your confidence about this, would you consider it?
I would consider it.
I'm gonna, I'll call you after this, because one of the things that typically happens is that they really prepare, the consultant will prepare everyone to engage. And then you'll have access to us in between, so we can always send you back in the room. With some talking points and that kind of thing, but I really feel like you have the right instinct for this. And I'd love for you to consider this, not only because I think you could represent us well, but I think it would be a great leadership opportunity. So
I appreciate it.
yeah, thank you so much. And I didn't ask you because girl, you gotta keep us out of audit.
I would be able to see,
Yeah.
but I think you were great.
Yes, thank you so much. Tracy.
I'll just add that the whole CCDC board is on there, so I'm gonna be on that search committee
Yeah.
as well. And as a separate kind of process, I have a little bit more flexibility that's there. So I will also be there to support you in number.
And we will make sure that you're fully prepared.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll make sure that that happens. And I, again, just part of the process is to orient everyone to the process. So if you'd be willing to sit there on our behalf, I'd appreciate it. Great, I'll follow up. So back to the letter, is it all right with all of you having looked at it, tone, content, and I hit the marks that we want to hit?
So do you think you should just make a small adjustment? Acknowledge that they've
Yeah, I can do that.
done this part, they've done, and then
Yeah.
here's our other. But I think the tone is perfect.
Great, so I would, do I need a motion for this, Tracy, or can we just kind of high five?
As long as there's consensus.
Okay, great, thank you so much. Tracy, I will turn the meeting over to you and Tessa. Wait, do we have something?
No, I was just gonna start with the bills, but do you wanna start?
If you don't mind, for sure.
Go for it. Thank you.
Thanks for everyone's flexibility in all of this.
We owe you.
But we did, no, and then I apologize because we're here to discuss the budget for next year. So we obviously do have I mean, for the account that we have, there's not much, so we were able to go through this thoroughly. And make some notes about coming up with something that we think is realistic and, successful. So, so, did everyone get a chance to look at it? Do you, have any questions, or do you want me to just start going by our conversation?
And what you would like to do. Tessa.
So I'm going to actually start with the expense side to this. So we had decided we're just going to remove this portion and Tracy made very good notes on the side of how we went through this. So tax would say 0, we would probably just remove this line. The chamber or the dues, we broke it down with to the 2 entities that we would spend our that portion on. Interest we can remove. That was, we don't have any loans anymore, we don't expect to. Legal fees, we wanted to break out the public hearing, so that was a little bit just more transparent, even though it's a small amount. Office supplies, we were able to get the QuickBook quote and then also put the postage and mailing that we would need. Professional services, again, ties right back to the quote from Danville and McKee for the audit. Miscellaneous, we left there, travel and meetings. We did leave that at $1,000. We know that there's been some professional development opportunities. So we wanted to make sure that we had something there just to run by stuff. For contract services, we did put $52,000 in there. We looked at currently if we were to stay with MRV. We don't know what that, if this is 100% guaranteed, but we do think that that is the way that we should make a plan right now. I know that we discussed, CETA came back to life, we would go back that route, but we're just in a situation where Tracy's been great, has her own group. I think we did a pretty good estimate based on the bills that we've had, what we anticipate with the learning curve, so $52,000 should be good. And pretty close to accurate, it's, not with just, and again, I guess I should have prefaced this too, what I did at the meeting is, I do like to be conservative with things just to plan, just in case something happens. So I think 52,000 is fiscally responsible in the sense that it's going to be able to get us to get the job done and then be prepared for if something went over or there was something else that was unexpected, especially since we're at the next level stage. For marketing, we wanted to keep 7,500 there, or we put 7,500 there with a little side note that that's 10% of what our anticipated admin fee is. So we feel like that's something to at least start with, that we're getting that committee started. We want to invest into the people, to the companies that have come to us and make more of a stance in the community. So everyone knows that we're here. So we looked at what our expenses were. And kind of went backwards a little bit with the revenue piece because we know we're going to get some of that interest and be more on top of that, but since we do mostly have an in and out account, we don't know how the interest levels are. Again, trying to utilizing those CDs when we can, we think $5,500, we could get that with interest. With the admin fees, Tracy provided us a couple different opportunities that were in the pipeline. And again, being conservative, she broke it down probably 5 different ways, but to say, we have these 2 projects that could potentially bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars, but this one we know will definitely come in. So I do think that that's a great number to go with, again, as we're getting into this new year. Some of these, and also revamping everything. So really coming into an exciting year of it. Land, we have 0 there. We know that we have some parcels for sale. We're kind of hoping that that gets closed by the end of this year. So we didn't want to rely on for next year with the planning. If it gets in there, yay. So that puts us at a healthy $5,000, well, $51.75 net. So that was our basis on it. We're glad to get this done in September. I believe that we have to have it. Do we have to have it approved next month?
Yes, we'll approve it in October.
So we're very much available for questions in the meantime before we have to come to that.
Any questions, observations about the budget? Your understanding the rationale behind why the numbers are presented in the line items as they are?
Well done.
That was good, thank you.
Thank you.
It was a fun meeting.
Small up to the school district.
Yeah, it's just way more fun.
So this presentation doesn't require any action tonight, Tracy?
No, so the finance committee will meet again in the beginning of October. If you have other thoughts between now and then, or There's any like adjustments you think we should think about, the finance committee will finalize a proposal and bring that for approval to the October meeting.
Which is October 3rd now, sorry.
Yeah, yes, the finance committee is now October 3rd.
Yeah, so, I don't know, chamber meetings there.
Thank you so much, Tessa. You've really taken on a lot to get us squared away. You've done it with integrity and expeditiously and expertise. I appreciate that so much. If you gotta go, we know you. All right, next on the agenda is the bank accounts. Tracy, you want to do that?
Sure, I just wanted to bring a. Where's my person? Okay, there it is. Just a situation to the board attention. I don't know if everyone saw, but over the course of the last month, there was a release from the federal OCC. That there is now a formal agreement in place with Generations Bank, which is our operating bank. I took a deep dive into this to understand what that meant, and because there's a little bit of panic to start, but I'm actually not panicked anymore. So let me just explain what this is. So the OCC does investigations of banks to see where they are with their risk and their practices, their internal controls, their lending practices, all of those things. And there's a few different things that can come out of that, kind of like a clean bill of health. They can issue formal agreements which don't have specific actions. They require a bank to create a strategic plan to address specific concerns, but there's no restrictions or fines associated with that. They can continue to do business, but they need to go through a planning process that makes the OCC happy. Formal agreements can be terminated once that is in place, and there's progress towards implementing that plan, and the OCC feels more comfortable with the practices. In this case, it's really some concerns around some decisions the board has made around interest rates to their customers and how they've set those rates. So that's really what's at play here, it looks like, is some of those practices that the OCC felt were more risky than they were. So like in the past, like Lions National Bank has had a formal agreement that's been terminated. Most are terminated. It takes usually at least a year, or often 2 or 3 years. But these are strategic planning, they're formal agreements, they're not restrictions or fines. Another outcome could be prohibitions, cease and desists, and prompt correction actions. Those are actually sorts of restrictions and like regulatory, like you can't do XYZ anymore. Sometimes it's related to the bank itself, sometimes it's an individual, but those seem to me to be a little bit more serious. And then there's civil money penalties and restitutions, which are actually fines and money that the bank needs to pay out. So it is not to say that formal agreements are not serious. There are obviously serious concerns with some of the practices, but they don't seem to rise to the level of some of these other things that could happen. So Generations Bank has issued a formal agreement. They're in the process of going through that planning process. My indication also, it just seemed, I was just looking at how many of these have been coming out, and there's been a lot lately. So I just started digging into that, and after those high profile bank failures last year, mostly on the West Coast, over the last 10 years or so, a lot of bank failures have been very small banks with very small amount of assets. Last year, we had multiple high asset banks fail. And so my impression is that this caused the OCC to decide to look at banks that perhaps weren't on the list yet and kind of pick up their activity around this more preventative investigation and these formal agreements, because we're on track to have the most formal agreements in the last 10 years. So like, for instance, through August of 2024, there's been 11 formal agreements issued. The highest number in any other full year was 9. So we're just on track to have a really high number of formal agreements this year. So I think this is a reaction to those bank failures, that they're doing more of these investigations and they're issuing more of these formal agreements to try to avoid some of these things. And I'm sure the same thing happened after 2008. Like I'm sure this happened back then too. So long story short, with the bank's formal statement is that they're operating as normal, that there's not restrictions. My opinion is that there's something that we need to keep an eye on here, and I think it's worth keeping an eye on the strategic planning process. But I personally at this point don't feel a need to like build shit, you know, like pull all of our money out. We really only have a checking account. We just put that $75,000 into the CDC. So I just want to make everybody aware of what's happening. I don't have any specific recommendations at this point, other than to know that we do have money there and that I'm going to be keeping an eye on how this progresses over time. If there are concerns and people do want to maybe make some different decisions about banking, that's fine too. That's up to you. It's your money. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Any reaction?
I will monitor the situation.
Yeah, keep up to date. That's where my mortgage is.
Yeah, like, you know.
Yeah.
This seems far from a failure to me. It doesn't. There's a lot of other banks that have this. They're still operating and they're big banks. So. I feel a little less handy than I did at first.
Thank you for monitoring this first, Tracy, and we know that if something raises a red flag for you, you let us know. All right, and then we have a report from the governance committee.
Yes, so we met, it was Monday this week, Dan, and myself, and, Tracy was there. Basically, we reviewed the, board self-evaluation. You have received, my email. And basically, and again, correct me, I want to add something here. Basically, suggestions on the last page, the compiled evaluations. We took note to have less temporary executive director situation, which I think we're trying to do. Identify our 2025 goals, strategize our focus. Being more strategic about annual work plans, community engagement, and positioning in the community and region. And with our recent improvements up to the board agendas and education, we are on the right path. Obviously, we need to determine a path forward for economic development as a whole. So, you know, those were some of the suggestions on the last page of the compiled evaluations. One of the things we came up with at the meeting, because of that, we're inviting clients to attend board meetings to provide feedback and celebrate what they've accomplished. So people that have had pilots, they come here, they ask for a pilot or a tax payment, and then we just get a check from them, or we did the payouts. And, this allows us to, you know, be reminded why we do what we do. You know, see how everything is going with their business, kind of keep tabs and celebrate that the work that we do, you know, does help businesses and the community in general. And you know, the other thing that to add on to that, it's also important for us in whatever ways we can to highlight the businesses that we could pilots too. So that could be a part of our marketing strategy, and the marketing committee is going to be soon. There's definitely been an acknowledgement, you know, and I think that's why it's wide range in certain categories of, you know, how we're reading our strategies or agree or disagree. there's just been an acknowledgement, it's been about very volatile year, still volatile, it's been actually volatile longer than a year, but, you know, we're on the right track. And that, I agree with that as well. We also acknowledge that we did not get, responses from, all the board, about half the board responded. And the next time we like full participation. The annual evaluation will be passed out in December. And I'm bringing this longer one back June 2025 as a true mid-year evaluation. And again, like you know, get it. There was a lot going on at the end of last year, and we did get lost. But again, what I think we're trying to do is, you know, turn the page. There are new opportunities on the horizon. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're prudent about moving forward with whatever we do. But you know, right now we're doing a lot of in-house keeping, and we want to make sure that what we're doing as a board, you know, is in compliance with, you know, heritage reporting and our role, basically our bylaws or charter, which I'll get into next, but that's basically what we had for our discussion regarding the evaluation and self-evaluation, and open it to the whole ADA board if they wanted to discuss that or want to review the final charter.
Tracy, do you have anything to add just from our regulatory responsibilities to the assessor? The only thing that I would say is, board chair, I attended this meeting and trying to pop into everybody's meeting at least once, that I am on deck to meet with Katie, and I think there's some really good recommendations that fell out of this that we can take into the marketing committee. But I want to let you know that as a board chair, when I look at an evaluation of this nature, it also sends me cues, right? Like about meeting structure, how to present information, and all of those kinds of things too. So I'd encourage you again, just to kind of peruse that if you didn't get a chance to complete it, just to kind of see what the categories were. Because a lot of that should influence and inform how we conduct our business when we're together. So there's some things in there, like even adjusting our agenda for today, and that's being agile about that, dependent on the content, so we don't feel pressed for time to discuss important topics. Know that I would be looking at that, taking some cues from that, continually improve what happens in our meetings, and to make sure that we're being able to do the business the way that we're supposed to. Any thoughts, comments? Good. And again, I think the categories just themselves are helpful. Things that we want to remind ourselves that we have these particular areas of responsibility. And I love that the detail connected to that gives us a cue for what a good job would look like. And then I'm also looking at in terms of working with Tracy to make sure our meetings do what we need them to do. Thank you much.
Gwen, I had a comment, if I may.
Yes, please do.
I just wanted to really commend you on the grace and leadership I've seen you exemplify over the past few weeks with some very difficult things happening in your life, and just appreciate you still being here as our leader, but also exhibiting the need to take time for self-care. So I just wanted to commend you on that and let you know I'm thinking about you.
Thank you so much, Katie. I really appreciate that. And I mentioned, I think in a meeting that you weren't able, but I appreciate you all showing me grace and be glad I don't look like what I feel like. Thank God for me, let's say. And I'm still leaning on all of you, right? And so leaning on Tracy, like I said, girl, I might not remember that. Send me a love note. So I really appreciate that. And you know that I'm very much so committed to doing the good job. And in that same vein, as part of evaluation, I am always open to direct feedback about my style, my communication style, all of that, because my way of being can't be a hindrance to our capacity to get the work done as well. So I was telling Terry that I served on a board where at the end of the meeting, the board could send me notes about how they felt that specific meeting after that was the chair that, where sometimes it was like, you know, when you push just too fast, or talked too fast, we didn't have that information, so. I'm not my best self, but I am feeling really good, and I'm only doing things my mother would want me to do, and she would want me to do. So I'm hanging in, I appreciate that, Katie, so much. Unfinished business.
So and also before we end, we need to circle back to the bills.
Yeah, it's just.
I'll go ahead to the bill, yeah. Y'all want to pay those?
If you don't mind, it's
Go ahead.
only to
Do
me.
your thing.
That's
That's an example of a thing that I do. For the record.
On the bills, there's just one bill to pay right now, it's for MRB Group for last month, and, so that's on the docket in the packet, and just as an FYI for everybody, we are putting together pilot invoicing right now, so that should go out in the next week or so, and we'll make sure to use that new account as those funds start to come in. So we'll just need a motion to approve that bill.
I will give them ask a motion. Thank you, Mr. Lovell. A second. Thank you, Mrs. Stephanie. And any other discussion about the bill? Tracy, like that or not? All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you so much. All right, Tracy, unfinished business.
Yeah, so the only thing left in unfinished business is an update about those residential properties. I did reach out to Steve, our broker, and he mentioned that that lots have been moving slowly in the local market and things have been slowing ahead of the upcoming elections, but that we have had a couple of inquiries so far, one from the neighbor and, oh, Karen's not here. Heard about her earlier. One from the neighbor and one from an agent who has a client that's interested, but needs to check with the city on some zoning laws, because they want to put up a workshop, which is not technically allowed under current zoning for those properties. So he's waiting to hear back from them. It is listed on the MLS and have the properties marketed on their website. He said this is pretty typical of what they're seeing with vacant lots right now. So we're not necessarily doing less good, it's just not as active as I would have liked. I was like, 2 days, we're gonna have these gone. And then also we found out from Jenny Haynes today, she reached out to Gwen and myself that she had actually pitched those properties to Jackie Riley of TJ Riley Construction, who was looking to build some other houses on Bradley. So she kind of informed Jackie of these properties to have her look at it and see if she want to expand her scope.
Yeah, the update on Builder's Choice.
They have not submitted a site. application. So we're waiting for that.
Yes, so I probably ended prematurely, also part of the governance committee, meeting, we talked about reviewing the charter and the bylaws and primarily the charter. I reviewed it and it seems like, nothing really jumped out at me as far as anything needed to change. I did know that the bylaws in recent years, we've had to update those for reasons. One of voting, the voting tally of present members, and Rob remembers that, I'm sure, vividly, and also the change in the bylaws regarding making sure that we're able to make payments to the tax jurisdictions directly in case we can't get it to the treasurer. So, I mean, I don't know if Glenn or Dan, if you had anything that you wanted to.
I didn't look at the material.
Okay.
I'm not an A+ student.
Okay.
More like an A- B+.
Well,
We just had this meeting on Monday.
I think we funded to him.
I'll just say it's like, can you just calm down?
I just think,
Give me like 2 days.
But I would say nothing jumped out as anything that, I don't think, I know the last time we reviewed was 2014, but there's nothing that's jumping out as, and I know we gotta review this every year, but still, there's like, but at least the bylaws, we've had to, keep, so it's not like everything's staying the same, so I just wanted to
Thank you.
know that everything's okay and.
And remember, we always have Rob Sawyer in our lives, so we get to peruse them when we're kind of feeling. And I'm sure he would, so. Any board updates, anything on your head, your heart, your mind, you just want to bring to the attention of the AGA board at this point? We good? Mr. Hunter? Anything to?
Hate it, my life's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Last 2 months.
Yeah.
Plus I have a major concussion that is causing me tons of pain.
Oh, my goodness.
Jeez. I don't know what they do.
That's
That's the headache.
Yeah, his notes, you didn't look like you were.
Uh,
Well, thank you for coming, I appreciate that.
And I'm sorry I was sick. I had it on my schedule.
I have an operating principle for our board, family and health over everything.
Yeah, I tell you, no.
That's
don't
my,
get a concussion,
that's my thing.
It's no joke.
So,
It's no joke. It's god awful. I was out cold and I could hear voices, but I could see anyone. Everything was black, and then I started seeing flashes of light.
wow.
It was very scary. 2 months later, it's still. I got a headache from sun up to sundown.
Oh, take care of yourself, and seriously,
Yeah, well,
family and health over everything. We
the
can
MRI didn't
communicate.
show up brain bleed, but it did show, the, whatever, I forget what the neurologist called it. It's just gonna take time to recover.
Well, the good news is you can join my Zoom if you. You can even be laying down when you do it. I don't care about those things. We got you. We have your back.
And then doing all the pension applications
Yeah.
for my brothers and sisters and
Yeah.
lost their jobs.
Yeah.
And sitting there and asking all the questions and doing all the paper with the headache, so it's been rough.
Yeah.
I went in online for me, but it's been difficult.
Yeah.
I don't hear that as whining at all.
Corporate America strikes again.
Ralph knows all about it.
Bill, having gone through it, I wear the tinted glasses. It's called an FL41 tint. You can get them online, and you can get them in your own prescription too. They really help.
Yeah, I got an appointment with a neurologist again, I think it's, Tuesday.
Okay.
We're gonna talk about some of those things, some things to try to lessen the pain.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But these glasses saved my life. They're not just a fashion statement or funny looking. So
I'm already funny looking, so nothing's gonna hurt.
This could be one of the most important conversations we had.
Yeah,
Seriously,
definitely.
really gotta stay healthy. I just have a final request, Tracy's like, can you give me something to do? This is in preparation for our participation to serve on the search committee. Tracy, what I'd like you to do, if you could extrapolate from the Comoin report, the position description, so that we can take a look at it. I think it's important that we establish for ourselves what we would be looking for in terms of the philosophy, skills, and behaviors of the next executive director of the One Stop in the event that person becomes ours. And I also think if we share in our boardroom what it is we're looking for, it becomes another filter that Stephanie can use as she's representing us in that room. So I like the job description sent out. I think that might be the only thing. And I don't know what the CCDC is doing, but I want us to have our own point of view about what we're looking for. And that I think will also up Stephanie's capacity to engage in that work from a position of confidence that she's representing what we would like to have her represent at the table. So.
I like that she's no longer considering.
I made an offer. I got it. Yes.
So I will meet with you tomorrow to discuss whether you want to be.
Speak things into beware, I will voluntold you in a minute, but I will. And you do have the option to say no, because then I'm putting somebody else in this room. But I did have a high but I think even should Stephanie say no, which I'm betting my eyelashes at her right now, it's still, it's still, we got you back. It's still important for us now to heighten our own awareness that CCDC is moving into that process. And I don't think we should be one bit haphazard or ambiguous about what we would be looking for in someone, okay? So, thank you, Stephanie, I owe you one. I'll go to the liquor store and buy some. I'm in there all the time. So just that's my final comment for today. Trace, you'll get that out to us, and you can look through the report. There was some other stuff, we can talk offline about what I want us all to have anyway. So all right, if there's nothing else to bring before the board, I'll ask for an adjournment. Call to adjourn the meeting. No, second. All those in favor?
I.
All right. You ain't gotta go, you gotta get out of here.